Hello and welcome to the first installment of my artist study series where I'm going to figure out my own art style and career path by studying the artists and artwork that inspire me. I'm not sure what format I want to make these videos in because I've never done it before, but I don't think they'll be too biographical. These videos are intended to be learning studies where I'll analyse techniques, themes, and artistic choices to better understand how they work, why I like them, and how I can apply those ideas to my own practice. If that sounds interesting or useful to you and you're also looking to learn, then join me for today's artist, Basil Gogos. Most of my research for this video has largely come from these two wonderful books. There's so many beautiful examples of horror art throughout the decades and lots of stunning pieces by Basil Gogos himself, so I can't recommend these enough if you also love horror art and history or if you're looking for lots of great references to practice with. These and any other sources will be listed in the description. So, Basil Gogos, his career began in 1959 with his first professional illustration for a Western paperback. He had a long art career where he produced many wonderful artworks from books, magazine and CD covers to editorial illustrations, advertising and commission work. He created stunning movie and theatre posters, portraits, murals, and he even worked as an art teacher for a while. His most notable and beloved work is that of his horror portraits, and they are my favourites from his body of work, and that's what I'm going to study today. What immediately strikes me about Gogos' paintings is his dramatic use of lighting, dynamic contrast in colours, and the interesting textures he uses across each piece. It also doesn't take long for the next key feature to really shine through, and that is the way that Gogos captures the emotions of his subjects. Not only that, but a lot of his paintings were created from black and white reference images of characters that had never been seen in colour before. Like, he chooses these colours. Now, that is so impressive, it's a huge skill, and I'd really love to develop an eye for that. Colours have always been really special for me, but my attempts to make my own colourful art haven't been successful, and that's because I don't know what I'm doing. Believe me when I say it was really difficult to narrow it down to just a few pieces to study, but accepting that I unfortunately do not have endless amounts of time, I chose these three. Lon Chaney as the Phantom of the Opera, Rondo Hatton as the Brute Man, and Henry Hull as the Werewolf of London. Okay, I'm excited. I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where to start, but I'm ready to learn. Let's go. But first, let's warm up because I can't really draw very well. I used a technique here that I learned in life drawing classes where instead of going straight into the main drawing, you do a bunch of rapid, loose warm-up sketches. The idea is to work quickly and not get precious about the details, but instead focus on mapping out where all the different features connect. These sketches aren't supposed to look good, and if you can accept that, you can relax more into it and have a much easier time of working on the main piece. Apparently. Gogos done life drawing classes, and apparently he always brought an anatomy book with him, which I hear is actually quite common for studying how to draw people well. That's something I'll invest in later, but I didn't do it here. I just wanted to see what I could come up with first, and I also didn't learn that fact until I was almost finished these studies, to be honest, but I'll come back to that. Something else I want to come back to, I think I poorly communicated something in my first journal video where I was trying to talk about how often I hear people psych themselves out before they even really give themselves a chance. And I was saying that I don't really believe anyone that says they can't draw or paint, because often the reason they think they can't is because the early stages of their creative thing didn't look good, but I don't feel that people give themselves enough time. Like, they often don't make it past the first few drafts, so I was just trying to encourage any self-doubters to keep trying, but I think it might have came out wrong. Now, hopefully, I can better make that point with visual references in this video. For example, the painting or study I'm about to make has started out looking like this. So I'll check back on this point later and see if it holds up. So I don't know how Gogos painted these, right? But I think generally you're supposed to paint the whole background first and then you start layering the features from background to foreground. I know those words, but I don't really know what they mean. And that's not what I'd done here because I'm impatient and underconfident and ignorant to it, to be honest. I don't really know where the through line is from background to foreground. Like, obviously, the orange and black of the background here are the first layers, and then the highlights are the foreground, I think, but I don't really know what order every other colour and feature should be placed. So I prefer just blocking in all the areas I see that are the same colour as whatever colour I currently have on my paintbrush. And then I just layer over and over again until it starts to look like something. And by that I mean I repaint over my mistakes until I figure out what looks right. What I'm really trying to understand here is how Gogos chooses these colours, especially from black and white references. He said that he just imagined the subject being lit up from different angles by 4 different coloured lights. And I'm still like, aye, but how? I don't understand colour theory, but I know it exists. I know that I love colours, and I know that I can look at this painting and think, man, there's some beautiful colours there, but I don't know how to pick them. Even though I'm studying an existing piece right now and I can see all the colours on the original, like I still couldn't figure out where I should paint next. And that's where I think the background to foreground thing comes in. But to be honest, that technique to me, it always feels a little bit more like I don't know, like carefully and gently placing one thin sheet of fragile material on top of another, and I'm too heavy handed and impatient for that. I like diving right in and just starting to mould the paint and working quickly. I feel like I need to fill in all the blanks to have a visual guide for where I should go next, but I accept. Maybe I would have better results if I actually learned these proper techniques. If we look here, for example, like I know I shouldn't really go so dark so soon, and I don't even know if Gogos used any black in his painting. But I was struggling to figure out what to do next, so I just defaulted to my usual method of marking out the darkest spots to separate the different areas. But something wasn't right here, and I'd been painting for a wee while with no clue on how to fix it. So I brought in technology to save the day. I took a picture of this study on my tablet and I lay it over the top of the original painting, and then I just shifted the opacity scale back and forward to see where I went wrong, and it turns out I went very wrong with the facial features. But this did help me get things right. After doing this and feeling like I'd maybe cheated in some way, I learned that Gogos would make a charcoal sketch of the subject on tracing paper so that he could do this very thing by placing the paper over the top of his painting throughout the process to make sure he was keeping the features right. What I don't think is a technique or a good technique is my continuous relayering of paint to fix my mistakes, because it wasn't really working here, especially since yellow is opaque and therefore not good at masking other colours, especially if what you're trying to mask is a dark colour. But I wasn't disheartened since this is all a learning experience and I'm not going for an exact replica. Obviously, I'm making a study of Gogos' work to see if I can visually figure out how he builds a painting. After about an hour of corrections, things were starting to look better. He was looking very young, and another hour of painting magically aged him. So I finished this session by overlaying again just to make sure I had everything lined up, and I was satisfied. When I picked it up the next day, I had a wee friend join me. Hello, Goblin. You're so cute. Goblin loves hanging out. He loves getting involved in anything that I'm doing. He likes to splash my water. He likes to try grab my paintbrushes. He thinks I can't see him, but I can. He just loves being near me when I'm doing things. He loves to try and sabotage me. Excuse the wee camera shake. You know, so many people tell him that he's ugly and disgusting, and they'll say things like, "Ugh, like why would you even want a cat like that?" And some people won't even pet him when they come over, and it's a wee shame because this boy loves cuddles and he's a wee beauty inside and out. You know, I'm so glad he can't hear the things that people say about him because I wouldn't want that to squash all of this joy and affection. And he's off. And he's back. Oh, he's so cute. I just love him so much. But Daddy, I love him. You know, I didn't even notice until I watched this back that I didn't paint anything for ages here because I was too busy watching this wee beauty. I'm thinking this angel of mine is wanting a portrait of his own, and just you wait, my wee darling, we're on the same page, but I've got a few studies to make first. So I worked on this for another couple of hours, and here it is. Okay, it's looking good. I like it. So just to call back to the point I was trying to make earlier, a reminder, this study started out looking like this wonky ass sketch and it became this rough painting. And if I stopped there because I accepted this is as good as I was capable, then I wouldn't have ended up with this cool study piece that I'm really happy with and I've learned a lot from it. And look, it's obviously no Gogos, right? There's so much texture and fine detail missing. My guy, he also looks a bit more angry, whereas Gogos guy, he looks defeated. So I didn't quite capture the emotions, and there's still some elements here missing and that I don't even know what they are, but to me, this is a good enough start for a study, and I've learned a bunch that I can take into the next one. So, what have I learned? Well, I'm not going to start with the warm-up sketches. They took way too long. I did not enjoy the process, and it just delayed the painting part. Plus, it was still off anyway, and I spent ages making corrections. So, I think I'll just use a grid method this time, and I'll be more careful where I place my yellows, which will be very important since this piece has a lot of yellow. I noticed when I was painting the Phantom as well that the first few passes of paint were quite muted and the yellow especially looked kind of dirty because of the brown background. I don't know if Gogos painted a white layer underneath to get such vivid colours or if he also just layered over and over again. But to make the yellow stand out, I'm going to paint white underneath the areas that I think are going to be yellow, and I'm going to try focus on figuring out how to get those textures a bit more too. I only spent a few minutes making this sketch because I didn't want to focus on the details here. I wanted to challenge myself to see how well I could paint the details without a perfect sketch underneath. But I was not looking forward to this one and I really didn't enjoy making it at all. To be honest with you, I didn't even like this painting, but I still chose it over so many other beautiful pieces. But why? Why? I lamented for the 6+ hours that I spent on it. Well, what can I say? I like to torture myself. Nah, it wasn't that. I was curious about it because I didn't really know why I didn't like it. But it was the first Gogos painting that didn't really make me feel anything. So what's going on here? Well, the subject's handsome, the facial angle's interesting. It does have Gogos' classic light colour texture thing that I love, but maybe I just didn't like the lack of contrast and texture compared to other pieces. Maybe it's just that I don't know this character or actor. Well, nah, because I also don't know Henry Hull or his werewolf character, but I still love that painting. But I started painting it anyway, and then I ordered the monster movie art book, and the print was different in that one, and I actually preferred it there, so I used that as the main reference. I preferred the textures on the hat and suit jacket, and the colours just looked better overall. I read that Gogos made this piece just to include in that book, and he said that he really liked it and he still owned it. And out of nowhere, I was suddenly struck by the blinding light of inspiration. Nah, I don't know, like I thought there was a good message there, something about the importance of accepting and appreciating your own work. Just because someone else doesn't like it doesn't mean that it isn't good or valid, or that you're a rubbish artist, or that the rest of your work is rubbish, or that you should stop making art. Like, I love everything I've seen of Gogos' work so far, like literally everything I've seen, except this one. But that doesn't change how I feel about his other art, and it obviously doesn't change his status as a good artist. I am obviously a wee nobody, in my small opinion, would likely not negatively affect how Gogos felt about himself as an artist or how others see his work. But what am I trying to say here? Like, okay, well, I'm projecting a little bit because I have allowed people's dislike of my art to affect how I feel about it and how I feel about myself as an artist. I am on the path to overcome my self-consciousness, but do you know what really inspires me? You know what really helps? Other people just doing creative things or just doing anything, but especially seeing someone comfortable in themselves or really liking their own work, or just feeling good about their art. And look, I don't think Gogos made this piece to be interpreted this way, and how could you really feel self-conscious when you've been approached by someone who wants to make a book about you in celebration of your art? But all I'm trying to say is I ended up feeling really inspired by it, this painting that I started out heavy disliking, how it pays to investigate things that you do not like. Alright, but it still took a while to arrive at that point because I was not having a good time here, not at all. I was really struggling to get the features right. The angle was tricky, especially how the angle and the expression changes things, like the size of the eyes. Like the eyes are two different sizes and I kept trying to make them the same size. And the shadows were difficult to get right too. Like it seemed like the more paint I added to it, the more wonky it looked, and I couldn't figure out the textures, especially on the face. I've no idea how Gogos got this greenish yellow colour and how he made it look so natural, because when I tried it, it just made the painting look dirty or something. I was getting really frustrated at myself, and you know, all the usual intrusive, self-critical, doom prophesizing thoughts started to show. You know the ones I mean, right? And I just felt awful, man, but I caught myself eventually. You know, those habits I had to break. But I was like, right, nah, I'm not having that. I'm not speaking to myself this way. I'm here to learn and have fun and share that with others. So I had a break and a wee cup of tea, and I agreed with myself I wouldn't go back to the painting until I was ready to be a friend to myself. So 10 years later. Nah, but it did take me about a week. During that break, I did some research on the Brute Man and Rondo Hatton, the actor, and that is when my view really shifted on this painting. I thought Hatton was handsome here, right? Handsome Hatton. Say that 5 times. Handsome Hatton, handsome Hatton, Hatton, can't do it. But it doesn't seem like that was the consensus. He started out with conventionally attractive looks, even being voted handsomest boy in his class. He was a respected athlete, he fought in the First World War, and then he developed a progressive, disfiguring bone disease that eventually led to his premature death. But because of how his facial features changed, filmmakers sought him out to play ugly characters and monsters and psychopaths, and he was apparently reluctant to do so. He often wasn't credited, and for his big role movies like The Brute Man, they didn't even release until after he died. Honestly, I cried reading about him. I don't know, I just felt sadness for him, and I felt really guilty for not liking this painting in the beginning. I picked this Phantom of the Opera piece to study because I feel a grief for this character when I look at it. Separate from the story, he looks broken. He doesn't look scary to me. He looks alone and ashamed. He looks like a child who's been told off in a really nasty, degrading way, or like a person who's tried to be vulnerable in some way, but instead of being embraced, he's being laughed at or something. Like, I'm getting Frankenstein's monster vibes from this one. This Phantom painting was also by Gogos, but the tone is very different. This reads more like a horror headshot. There is still a touch of sadness, I think. Like, comparing this painting to the black and white reference image, this looks like classic shock and horror, right? He looks like he's trying to cause a fright, maybe, but I think the way Gogos painted it here, it has that look to it, aye, but the glint in his eyes and the surrounding colours and textures, they make it look more to me like he's teary-eyed or displaying some sort of sad emotion compared to it just looking like a light reflection in his eyes here. I couldn't find the black and white reference for this piece, and I didn't see it during the movie, but I really wanted to see the moment he makes this face. I wanted to know why he makes this face, but I also wanted to understand if the feeling I get from this was the performance of the actor, or if that's the magic of Gogos in his ability to capture the humanity of the people he is painting. It's so beautiful to me because he looks defeated, because there's some emotion here. It's very relatable, it's really sympathetic, and you know, it's different from how we usually see horror characters portrayed. But anyway, back to the Brute Man. I said earlier, like, I didn't feel anything looking at this painting, but knowing some of the actor's background, knowing that he was described in some of his roles as hideously disfigured, and one woman screams hysterically at the sight of him. Like, no wonder he was reluctant to take these roles, if that even was his reason. I don't see what the problem is. I mean, I don't know about you, man, but I think that's a bit extreme. I think he looks fine, man. He looks fine. I would not scream at the sight of this man. Well, maybe not in the way the characters in these films do. But I feel more of a grief now looking at this portrait than I do for the Phantom. Like, maybe that's more for Hatton. Like, how did he feel about himself or his life? Was he content? Did he like being portrayed as a monster in these films? Did he have a fan base then that he knew about? Or did that happen, as it always seems to, only after he died? It makes me feel grateful that Gogos chose to immortalise this handsome face. So again, it pays to explore the things you don't like. Right, but back to the emotions. In this painting, without that context, he looked to me like a person who was reluctantly resigned to a cruel or unfair situation. But I did find this image later, which I think might actually be the reference Gogos used. So the tone's a bit different here, but I wonder why Gogos chose to focus on just the headshot. He could have painted the full pose too, or he could have included the hands at least, like he did for this character here. But the tone would have been different, and I wonder if it was intentional. With the hands included, he looks threatening, maybe like he's trying to intimidate, and I guess that's similar to what you see on the movie poster. Without the hands included, he looks sad or resigned to his sadness, at least to me. And again, is that the performance of Hatton? Is that his true emotions shown through his character, or is that simply the magic of Gogos? Or is it all of those things? Or is it none of those things? All I could find about it was this small sentence where Gogos says, "I really love this painting. I love the beauty of his ugliness." Nah, he doesn't talk like that, but I love the beauty of his ugliness. Damn, Gogos, like, not you too, man. Well, maybe he is ugly. Maybe I like ugly. I prefer an interesting face. I love weirdly shaped noses, different facial proportions, skin textures. Maybe it's the artist in me, but the stranger the features, the more visually interesting someone looks to me. I guess that's maybe what Gogos is saying too, actually. But in any case, I didn't quite capture that beauty as Gogos did. After that week of raging at myself, I sat down to the study and I was like, okay, calm down, it's not that bad. But sure, there's loads of mistakes, like the face is shorter than the real one, the features are wonky, so it kind of looks like a different person. I used too dark a paint colour around the eyes and on parts of the face. Again. I used white where Gogos didn't because I was trying to cover up my mistakes, and I still didn't get the textures right. I like the suit and hat textures, but I've still not figured out how Gogos layers his facial features or how he gets these textures on a face. Like, I haven't learned much more about the painting techniques of Gogos, but I did learn more about the man behind them, so I'll come back to that shortly. But before we move on to the next study, I just wanted to share something else, something huge. Did you know that there's a whole horror award named after Rondo Hatton, and it was created in part by the same person who made this book? The connections are endless. But now, what a wonderful thing. First of all, because the horror genre is still massively underappreciated, so it's good to learn ways that it gets appreciation. But secondly, do you know what you get if you win the Rondo Hatton award? You get a fucking beautiful bust of his head. Look at this, man. What an honour it would be for anyone who wins this. Like, learning this, it just made me feel so happy, and so happy for handsome Hatton that this was made in his name. But anyway, how do we progress with the next study when I still can't draw? Or let me reword it, I don't have the patience to learn how to draw well right now. I want to paint. The purpose of these studies is to learn how to paint with these dynamic contrasting colours, dramatic lighting, and combining these to create interesting textures and emotions. So let's just get back to the painting. Okay, but in my eagerness to get back at it, I forgot to film the sketching part, but I'll tell you about it anyway. So I used the grid method again, but I spent longer on it this time just to get all the details down so that I could just focus on the painting part. But I'll tell you, it still took quite a few attempts, even with a grid, even with overlaying on my iPad. Like, these angles are just sort of unnatural to the eye, or unnatural to coordinate between my hand and eye. Or what do I mean? Like, it was just difficult to draw. But I noticed in the last study that since I only painted white where I wanted the yellow spots to be, as soon as I put any other colour beside those areas, there was an obvious border and everything else looked muted in comparison. So I was going to paint the whole canvas white for this one, but I decided to start painting in this old textbook instead, and well, the canvas is light already, so that saved me a step. But as far as the painting went, this was by far my favourite study to make out of all three. I got immediately into a flow state. It was so relaxing. I've really loved making this one. I fought against my natural desire to fill the canvas and then layer over and over, and I didn't use any dark colours on the face until the very end, and when I did, I was very careful. I tried really hard to just stick to one colour at a time, but again, I ended up not filming most of it, unfortunately, because I was so zoned in that I just forgot about the camera. I forgot about everything else in the world, to be honest, and that's one of my favourite places to get to when I'm doing mooning activity, and creating things used to feel this way before I got so insecure. So I'm very happy to have felt that again. Anyway, I knew I wanted to study this painting as soon as I saw it. Like, there's something about it, man. Like, the facial expression, the attitude, the personality that's just as vibrant as the surrounding colours. I couldn't find the black and white reference Gogos used for this one, and I also haven't found a copy of the film yet, so I'm not sure if this is a shot from the movie or if it was a promo picture or what it was, but the expression is what grabbed my attention, and then the colour choice was secondary. So I like the colour choice, it's interesting, it's more subtle than before, but the piece still feels uniquely Gogos. I think the suit and neck look fairly ordinary, but you know, carry your eyes further up and see the yellow tones on the face and how they contrast with the bright red background, and that's what feels kind of Gogos. The skin colours here, it kind of makes me think of like mould or decay or jaundice, and I wonder how much that colour choice lends to the horror genre, because it kind of does look like a sickly person or decaying body, which you can see across other Gogos pieces too. The subject here, he doesn't look sad or sympathetic like the last two. Like, he just looks like a good laugh, honestly. I love the maniacal, sadistic glee in his face. He looks like that one friend who's always up for having a good time. So there's still some sort of strong emotion coming through here, but it is different from the other two, and it is a bit more scary. While I love these stories and these portraits and the three characters I've shown so far, the context of these characters isn't very cool, well, if they existed in real life. So before I move on, I want to make a disclaimer that I'm not trying to sensationalise people who cause significant harm to others, and I don't think Gogos or the general horror audience are doing that either. These stories are made for entertainment, but I do have things to say about them because the ways they reflect real life can be interesting to analyse. So what is there to analyse beyond the paintings here? Well, why are these characters considered monsters? What is a monster? I'll be honest, I've wrote thousands of lines of thought analysing this, and it's delayed me getting this video out for weeks because I just have so much to say about it, but I've had to accept that I should cut it all back and save a deep dive for another video. But the brief synopsis is as follows. Are they monsters because of their appearance? Or are they monsters because of how they behave? Or is it both? I think the true marker for monstrosity is in your behaviour towards others and the disregard for or the delight in the harm that you cause. It's an age-old story where there's a character with an unusual, atypical appearance who is significantly harmed, rejected and isolated by their society, and they are deemed to be a monster who should be hated and feared. But the characters who enact that harm, who inflict that damage, are not considered monstrous when they really are the true monster. And second to that, not always, but often, time and time again, that rejected individual endures so much harm and damage that it impacts them in such a way that they eventually do go on to cause significant harm to others, and in that way they do become monsters. How you look really has no bearing on who you are or how you are as a person, but people still tend to judge another person's character based on their looks, and it seems to me, based on my limited knowledge of these stories or monster characters generally, that they're first and foremost considered monsters because of their appearance, and that appearance is often at the forefront of their rejection and isolation from society. How someone chooses to use their pain against others isn't excusable, especially when there's many characters and real-life people who of course experience significant harm, rejection and isolation, but they go on to be the most lovely, caring, genuine person in any given room. So it's not to say that mistreatment is going to make you a monster and that it's therefore okay how you treat others because you were harmed first. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it makes me sad when a person or a character could have had a different life where so much harm could have been avoided if they'd just been accepted for how they looked. Have you heard that thing that's like, draw a monster? Why is it a monster? I wonder how many other people imagined a bizarre, large, mutated alien creature covered in tentacles and eyes, or a more humanoid figure with sharp fangs and wiry fur and big claws before getting to that second line. But that second line, it always makes me think, well, why is that what I imagined when it's more often normal looking, respected humans that are the real monsters? And that's because of the way they treat others, or rather mistreat others, and their looks and their charm and their status is often what lets them get away with it. Okay, but these characters, like the Phantom of the Opera, there's many variations of the story, but generally the story is that he has a strange, frightening, or bizarre appearance that is not deemed acceptable for that society, and that makes him an outcast, and through his isolation, he turns obsessive and murderous. Like, he just kills people that are in his way or that he doesn't like, and he also grooms and abducts a young woman and tries to force her to live with him forever as his wife. The brute man has an accident in chemistry class, and it changes his appearance, and he then seeks revenge on the people he holds responsible, even though he caused it himself. But then he also just kills other people at random that weren't involved. The Werewolf of London, he's apparently a normal man who has accidentally turned into a werewolf, and in order to prevent a full, irreversible transformation into wolfhood, he has to kill one person every night. And of course, he targets random women walking alone. And those actions are what truly make them monsters, not how they look. Obviously, if you look up the definition of monster, it primarily describes appearance, and then behaviour is at the bottom. But for me, behaviour should be primary, and it's our failing as a society that we would cast aside another being or actively harm them simply for having a difference in appearance. In my research for this section, I typed the following line into my search bar: social rejection and isolation as a precursor for monstrosity. And would you believe that every single link that came up was about Frankenstein's monster, who I briefly mentioned earlier and who I plan to explore in depth right here at this part. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do a deep dive on Frankenstein's monster right now because I have to close this video out at some point. But I felt glad, right, because I've been stewing on this for weeks, unable to get my thoughts together in a concise way, and it was starting to make me think that maybe I wasn't onto something at all. Maybe I was full of nonsense and what I had to say didn't have any meaning, and I was just maybe grasping at something that no one else would agree with or have anything else to say on it. But it seems like many other people have had the same thoughts on monstrosity, and they said it long before I did and in much better words. So trust me, I really have to fight myself here to not continue to dive further into all of these characters and all the social issues that they connect with. But the brief roundup is generally I feel a lot of sympathy for these characters who were let down by their society for looking different, and I'm sorry that their isolation leads them to develop maladaptive, murderous social skills. And to bring this back to the paintings, it is the beauty of Gogos that he captures these characters in such a sympathetic light. Now, I'm not the only one who sees Gogos work in this way, like I promise I'm not fully projecting here. I saw a good interview between Penny Dreadful and Basil Gogos where they discussed this very thing. So Dreadful says on the comparison of modern horror characters to the original classic horror movies that the characters have a certain pathos where you can sort of connect with them, and there's a tragedy and it's about the characters and it's not about the blood and guts. Gogos agrees. They are human in a way. They do have pathos. There's a sad feeling about them because they try to survive and we are so cruel against them. They discuss how Gogos captures this humanity in his paintings, in their eyes, and he says that it was always his intention to portray the helplessness of the monsters. Finally, he says that he dreads the thought of what we've been doing to them without understanding the reasons that they're there. Even if they wanted to be friendly, we are kind of ugly. In the Monster Movie art book, Kerry Gamble describes looking at this Phantom of the Opera painting for the first time as, through the eye holes of that motionless mask, I gazed into the soul of a scared and misunderstood madman. It seemed incredibly realistic, but with an energy no photograph could capture. It had the spark of life that can only be granted by the hand of a loving creator. Later, Gamble continues, although he painted strange characters in bizarre colours, Gogos never looked down on his subjects or his audience, and his talents provided the monster with an aura of dignity and respect seldom bestowed on such misshapen creatures. Vincent de Fate describes Gogos as not merely a great draftsman and a brilliant colourist, he had the gift of someone connecting to his subject matter, whose masterful brush brought that grim procession of the fabulous and the fantastic, the damned and the disfigured to life. He says it's a damn hard thing to make the grotesque beautiful, but somehow he managed it. Now, I don't know if I managed it, but I'm still happy with the results and the things that I've learned along the way. Now, for the real challenge, taking these lessons and inspiration into a piece of my own. and I have just the wee monster in mind. This wee beauty of mine, he is often called disgusting and hideous by other people. People have told me that cats like him shouldn't exist, which is strange, man, because he's the sweetest boy. He's so loving, he's super affectionate, he loves to play games, he loves to play wee pranks on me, he loves having conversations, we like to sing together, even though neither of us can carry a tune. He does my head in with how much he wants to hang out, honestly, but I love him so much. I love his determined, chirpy spirit. You just have to look at him and his wee bum goes up with excitement and he starts purring and chatting with you. As I say, it's a failing of humans that they would reject such a precious being like him just because they don't like how he looks. But all these people, they are the ones missing out. I'm so glad that he can't understand the things that people say about him. As I've said, I'd hate to see the ways that it could affect him. So I'd love to try paint him in a similar way to how Gogos paints these characters, to try capture the beautiful, emotional being that he is, to capture the beauty of his ugliness. So that's my upcoming goal for part 2. Look, I know, right, I really didn't want to make videos in parts, but there's been so many delays for the video already. I started this project in September last year, and even now that I've resolved most of the issues I was having and I'm getting closer to a conclusion, the more I play back what I've made so far, the less confident I feel about posting it. And I've made so many changes and so many cuts that I don't know if it even makes sense anymore, but it's just been so hard to close it out because I still have so many things that I want to say about these paintings, about Gogos, the characters, their many variations throughout the decades, the studies I've made here, the history of horror art and its current place in the world, the way the words we tell ourselves or the words we hear from others impact us, blah 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 blah, so much stuff. And the more I explore these subjects to try reach a meaningful conclusion, the more it actually opens things up, and I just don't want to leave anything out, and I don't want to be misunderstood. You know what I mean? There's a lot to it. But let's just decide this is a good thing. It's good that I feel so impassioned by this subject and see many avenues still to explore, and it's good that I can now put into practice some of those agreements I made in my journal video, like accepting where I am in my learning journey, accepting that mistakes will happen and are necessary for learning, and accepting that I should just post more often instead of trying to get something perfect, because perfection is impossible. These studies didn't start out with me wanting to learn how to draw portraits, but I think after spending hours making corrections, I probably should spend time learning how to draw, especially to factor in things like different angles and facial expressions. I am predominantly a painter, but to aid that painting experience, picking up these drawing skills is really going to help. It also has just occurred to me right now, while recording this part, that I probably should have studied the black and white reference images first to understand the tonal differences before trying to paint in colour, because I think that might have helped me work out the different stages. More so for the first two, but well, especially for trying to make my own colourful pieces. But it's a bit late now. Well, not really actually, because I still have an original to make, so I'll try it out then. I didn't want to spend hours planning how to make these studies, and I also didn't know what to plan for, right? It's only been through attempting these studies that I figured out what I should do next time. And of course, the biggest lessons for me always come from learning what not to do, but you only learn that by trying the thing. So I always hear people say that they want to do something, but they don't know how. Let's say this, for example, oh, I'd really love to make a horror portrait, but I don't know how. Well, me neither, man, but this is definitely one step towards learning how to make your own. Find a good reference image or find an artist that you really love and try to copy what you see. It's through the process of studying the art that you like that you can figure out how to make your own. I've been so afraid to try things out because I've been scared that it won't look good, or I'm scared at my lack of knowledge on the thing, but let's all just scrap that. Just grab a paintbrush or a pencil or tomato sauce, whatever you have on hand, whatever it is that you want to work with, just get the thing and give it a go. It's good if it looks bad. There's something to learn from that. Don't just tell yourself that it looks bad and then use that as a reason to quit. Try analyse why it doesn't look good and what you could do differently. And that's why it's good to study existing artworks too, because you have something to compare it to. It's easier than just working on a blank canvas, trying to make things up from your head. But make sure that the comparison is viewed through a critical lens for learning and growing and not through a lens of judgment and self-sabotage. Okay, I'm going to put a summary on screen and also a summary of the total hours spent. I wanted to do a breakdown of each part, but I end up doing lots of things at once, so it's hard, but I can tell you for the paintings at least, this was about the time I spent on them, and everything else, so like research, filming, editing, script writing, like everything else is approximately what you see on screen. So a rough estimate of the project total so far, hopefully the next project does not take this long, but we'll see how many more hours it'll take to capture the beauty of my lovely boy Goblin in part 2. I've also made a time lapse for each study, by the way, which I'll post after this video. And if you relate to the self-doubt point I've been trying to make, like, please consider laying off yourself and just giving your creative project a little bit more time. Oh, and no matter what you look like, no matter what you've been through, you're not a monster, or at least not the evil kind. You can be the cute kind if you want. How you are, the way you treat others, the way you treat yourself, that is what's important. Don't shut yourself out from creating, don't close yourself off from the world. Embrace the beauty of your monstrosity, if that is how you see yourself. Embrace your differences. And have a wee go at making something, maybe make a wee monster painting. Whatever you do it with love. Is that a lame sentence to say? I don't know, right? But I'll send you all some love anyway, some kitten purrs and some beautiful colours. Okay, bye!